And before we start, I want to announce we also have a special edition webinar tomorrow that Scott will be hosting. Debbie Allen, who has done several webinars with us, she did one in June of 2023 on the Betrayed Partner 3-Circle Plan. And then she did one in May of this year with 2 partners, one who chose to stay and one who chose to leave the relationship. And tomorrow's will be with a person who's a betrayed partner who also is a model, and so is paid for her looks. And this is about the body image and what happened to her in the course of the journey with sex addiction with her partner, and how that affected her. So I hope you will join if that's a topic that is of interest. Again, that one is 11 a.m. Thursday Pacific time tomorrow, and we would welcome your participation in that. So I think that's all. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add, I think, a lot of addicts have body image issues too. So this is not just for betrayed partners. So
yes,
either way, this is a really cool topic.
It is. And this is not about eating disorders, but we've had clients, as Scott has said, who have had eating disorders who have come to our residential treatment program. I mean, like, we want to look at all of this holistically, but it is, when you're paid because you look a certain way and you're now feeling not good about how you look, that's the devastation of the addiction. So okay, Scott, I know what you got for us today. Please share.
Okay, I just want to read the first line of the first question. I really feel like I need to hear some sanity today. So yeah, that's actually part of the reason I picked this topic. I mean, the holidays are coming up. We're just coming off an election. It's a lot going on right now. And I wanted to talk about some positive stuff. So we're going to look at Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. And we're going to look at it in the context of healing and recovery. And this will be applicable to both betrayed partners and addicts. I usually teach this to addicts, so I might skew a little bit in that direction. If so, I apologize. The journey of healing and recovery is truly heroic. And it's heroic because not only does it save my life when I'm on the journey, but it's also contributes to and helps the people around me. It makes life around me better. And we're going to actually talk about that. On the hero's journey, life takes on new meaning. And in recovery, life takes on new meaning. So that said, Joseph Campbell invented this thing that we call the hero's journey, or he mapped it out. Campbell was not a therapist. He was not a psychologist. He was nothing of the sort. He actually taught literature at Sarah Lawrence College, which was a women's school in New York. I think it's co-ed now, but don't quote me on that. Very good school. And he was really interested in why some stories are better than others. And the simple truth of the matter is some stories are better than others. So he noticed a pattern in all the great stories, not just American literature, but world literature, all the way back to Greek and Roman stories. So I'm going to share screen just for a sec. I'm going to share a little diagram. I'm going to try and make this bigger. There we go. Let's try again. There. Whoa. All right. So this is Campbell's journey or Campbell's version of the hero's journey. So we're this little hiker dude up here at the top. And in the beginning, this is where we start our story. We're just sitting at home doing not much of anything. And we get a call to action. We're usually not a hero. Think about some of our great stories. One that probably all of us are familiar with. Let's go with the very first Star Wars movie. Luke Skywalker, Chewbacca, Han Solo, Leia. The first one made, not the first one in you know what I mean. The one that I saw when I was 10. Thank you very much. At the beginning of the story, Luke Skywalker is kind of whiny. He's a whiny little teenager. I want to go on the academy. I don't want to do the field. By the way, his family, they harvested moisture, or they were moisture farmers, which I think is interesting, but side point. But he's kind of whiny, and he's just a whiny little kid. And he says he wants to do all those things, but he can't. He's just whining. He is not a hero. At the beginning of The Hobbit, we'll go with the actual book version of The Hobbit, not the multi-movie Peter Jackson version of The Hobbit. At the beginning, Bilbo Baggins lives in his little hobbit hole. It's a cute little hobbit hole. It's got little round doors and doilies, and I mean, it looks like his grandma decorated it. Um, and he's very comfortable. He eats about 6 meals a day, and he smokes his pipe, and he has no interest in leaving. And Gandalf shows up, and um, you know, just basically says, "I want you to come on an adventure." And a direct quote here is, "Adventures, none for me, thank you." Um, he has no interest in leaving the house. I mean, this is the call to adventure. And as addicts and sometimes as betrayed partners, we get repeated calls to adventure, especially addicts. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people said, "Gosh, you drink a lot," or, "What do you do at night when you disappear?" Or things, these are sort of calls to adventure that we ignore. Um, I mean, a lot of times flashing red lights are involved. A lot of times threats of divorce are involved. And, for betrayed partners, it probably looks a little different, but a lot of times, betrayed partners, Michelle Mays writes about this in her book, The Betrayal, by sort of like poke your head in the sand because you don't want to know. It's a lot easier to not know, even though part of you knows. And addicts are the same way. We'll poke our head in the sand. It's a lot easier to just stay stuck where we are. We're familiar with it. We've made a nest. It might be, a stinky, gross nest, but we've made a nest, and we figured out how, where the comfortable spots are, and we'll stay there. You know, um, we'll numb, addiction is a numbing thing. We'll lie, we'll avoid, we'll manipulate. And, no matter how many times we're called to action, we refuse it. This is active addiction. This is active infidelity in the relationship that nobody wants to deal with. What happens is, go back to the share screen. There we go. Usually there's some kind of intervention, supernatural aid, we call it here. Um, so we've been saying, "I don't need help with this. I'll just cut back, or you're overreacting." We do all that, and somebody comes in and says, "No." you know, it's time to move forward. The supernatural aid in some of our stories, I'll probably stick with Star Wars and The Hobbit here, because they follow this so perfectly. Star Wars supernatural aid. Tami, who's the supernatural aid in Star Wars? The first one we meet. Oh, you're muted. I'll answer for Tami. Obi-Wan. um, Obi-Wan comes in and says, "Hey, Luke meets Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan hands him a lightsaber, and says, 'Hey, it's time to get started on your journey here.'" And Luke, of course, says, "Oh no, I can't. The harvest is coming." All the things that he was complaining about. Now he's like, I don't want to leave my comfy hole here. And Bilbo, the supernatural aid, is Gandalf. Gandalf comes in, and then a bunch of dwarves come in, um, and they invite him out. But even he said, "Adventures, none for me, thank you." Um, but these supernatural aids, they kind of force these guys out. Bilbo actually pretty much goes willingly, but Luke gets forced because they go back to his house, and Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen are skeletons, and the place is burned up, and now they've got these two droids that the Empire wants, and they have no choice. So now he has to cross the threshold here, which is the beginning of his transformation. Bilbo, after the dwarves have trashed his house and they've left in the morning, and he wakes up, he's like, "Ah, thank goodness." And then he looks at the contract on the table, he signs it, he runs out the door, without his handkerchief. So he makes the decision, but we cross the threshold. Crossing the threshold is the beginning of transformation. The AA Big Book calls it a complete psychic change. And, you know, old ideas are set aside in favor of a new way of living. You know, what did I write down here? Working the 12 steps takes a person from the extreme nearsightedness of constantly fighting for survival to being a useful, valued, and compassionate member of their family, community, and friend groups. They're giving a life free from the bondage of self. That's language from the AA Big Book. It applies to all addictions. It applies to basically all life problems if we're going to journey and resolve them. We cross the threshold. The complete psychic change is, yeah, I can go back. And I did. I mean, I was in and out of recovery for a couple of years before I started moving forward, but it's never the same. Once you've crossed the threshold, you know, and it makes it very, 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 very hard to go back and feel comfortable living in your little hobbit hole or in, you know, the little hovel with Aunt Peru and Uncle Owen. You know, you really, there's a part of you that doesn't want to go back. So you cross the threshold. And, you know, when we cross the threshold, you know, you can see there are lots of challenges and temptations, but we also have helpers and mentors to help us along because at this point, we're still the schmo that we started out as. We're just like not a hero yet. So we cross the threshold in Star Wars. You know, obviously the obvious mentor is Obi-Wan, but very quickly we acquire some other mentors who are very different. We have the wizard mentor with Obi-Wan, and then we get the street smart mentors. Han Solo and Chewbacca show up, and they're helpers and mentors, and you know they're getting off the planet, and they're you know racing through you know little the debris of Alderaan, which they think is a meteor shower. There's lots of little challenges and temptations. The story's kind of getting started, but mostly this is a learning period for Luke. The Hobbit, you know, the obvious mentor, the wizard is another wizard, Gandalf, but there's also the street smart, the dwarves, and he learns from both of them. Same with Luke. He learns from both sets of helpers and mentors. Because he's eventually going to outgrow, they're eventually going to outgrow their helpers and mentors. And that's why they're pulling from multiple areas. And again, you know, they run into trolls and, you know, Bilbo, even early on, outsmarts the trolls and gets them turned into stone because he just delays with them. Addicts, we run into challenges and temptations. There's always that occasional desire to slip and relapse. As betrayed partners, there's always that flare up of mistrust and like fear and all those things that we run into. We need some heroes. We need some mentors and helpers. For us, it's therapists. It's people who teach work groups. You know, sort of like the dwarves. You know, like you know, the therapist is the wizard, and you know, people like Tami and I who are just recovering addicts we're the street smart. We're Han Solo and Chewbacca. Ooh, you can be Han. When I was little, I could do a spot on Chewbacca and a spot on Yoda, and then puberty hit, and that was the end of that. So it's like, boom, lost the ability to do this. But we have challenges, but we have heroes and mentors, and we learn. Go back to share screen. Eventually, in every great story, there is what we call an abyss, a death and a rebirth. And in addiction, it's like, oh, I have a slip, or oh, my partner wants a divorce, or you know, there's lots of abysses. Then we have to sort of deal with that death and find a way to be reborn. In The Hobbit, he gets separated from the dwarves and Gandalf under the mountain. He gets really deep under the mountain and runs into this creature named Gollum who wants to eat him. That's about as low as it gets. Star Wars, pretty obvious when the abyss is when Darth Vader kills Obi-Wan. And it's like, oh my God, we lost our wizard, we're screwed. Addicts feel the same way. So it's like, oh my God, I lost my wizard, I'm screwed. Betrayed partners have those moments, usually centered around slips and relapses, of their partner. But we have this abyss, and it feels like a death, and we've got to come out with some rebirth, and we come out transformed. Bilbo tricks Gollum, uses his street smarts to trick Gollum, finds the ring, and escapes the mountain, all on his own, much to everyone's surprise. Luke Skywalker, after the death of Obi-Wan, Luke steps up. He's starting to use the Force, even though it's very, very new to him. And he's pushing Han and Chewie to make better decisions, or more life-affirming decisions. He's transformed. Um, when we're transformed, let me skip ahead to my notes. This is kind of like, if you're familiar with the 12 step, there's this thing we call the ninth step promises. And the ninth step is, it promises when we get to that step in our recovery, that we're going to, know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. We're not going to forget about the past, but we're going to make lemonade out of the lemons. We've learned that, yeah, we're in charge of our own life, and we can make it better. Um, you know, that's the transformation. For addicts, the need to self-medicate retreats, not completely, but quite a bit usually. We're able to deal with life on life's terms. We become trustworthy. We start to foster healthy connections. For betrayed partners, it's, we start to maybe trust our partner again. We start to trust the world again. Maybe we start to trust our own instincts again. This is when we'll notice recovery in the addict. This is when we'll notice healing in the betrayed partner. And this is when this journey that we're on starts to become worthwhile. Um, then eventually there's usually a moment of atonement. Um, Atonement is, ninth step amends, basically, in 12-step parlance. Making an amends is not just saying, I'm sorry, it's saying, I did this. I'm sorry I did this. Here's how I'm going to make it right. Is there anything else I can do? And here's what I'm doing to make sure I never make that mistake again. That's atonement for an addict. Atonement for a betrayed partner might be, I'm never going to doubt myself that way again. I'm going to trust my instincts moving forward. Um, the atonement for Luke, the real atonement comes when Han Solo, who's not going to help, zooms in at the last moment to help. But Luke, this whiny little selfish teenager, is willing to risk his life to save everyone. I mean, he dives into that tunnel. His protection is all gone, and it's him versus the evil empire. And if he misses this shot, and if he makes it, maybe we'll survive. And and he doesn't know Han is going to come in and change him and say, kind of clean out the trench for him. um, uh, so he's willing to risk, and Han breaks his rule of only doing for Han, and he and Chewie come in and save the day at the last moment. In The Hobbit, Bilbo has partly gone on this journey because he's been promised like 1/14 of a mountain of treasure, a lot of treasure. And in the end, he trades his share of the treasure to stop a war between people he doesn't even know. Gives up his share of the treasure to stop a war. Um, that's a very different guy than the one with doilies and who's worried about his relatives coming in and stealing the silver spoons at the beginning of the story. So he has really changed. He has transformed, and he has atoned for being a selfish little hobbit. And the good news here is we can never go back once we've done this. I tell guys in my online work groups, my goal is to ruin your addiction for you. And this is what I'm talking about. I want people to become aware. I want addicts to become aware that, yeah, this is screwing me up. And it's screwing up the people around me. And now that I know that, I can't go back. You know, in the end, you know, the last stage of the hero's journey is what we call the return, and we get gifts of the goddess. In Star Wars, the return, you know, after they've saved the world, Han and Luke get medals and little kisses from Princess Leia. We don't know that she's Luke's sister yet. And for some reason, Chewbacca, who did everything Han did, doesn't get a medal, which I think is Wookiee racism. I'm just saying, Chewie should have gotten a medal. And you know, Bilbo goes back home, and he's, you know, he picks up like one little carton of treasure that they got when they outsmarted the trolls, and that's his only reward. Except, you know, Bilbo is now an adventurer, and he's got a story to tell, and you know, he's never going to be the same, and he doesn't want to be the same. That's his reward. In addiction, you know, sobriety, you know, I've heard people say sobriety is its own reward, and I totally agree. But, you know, I go to the Serenity Prayer, you know, sobriety, I was never serene before. I can pretty much find serenity in the face of any adversity at this point. I can look for the good. I can look for the lesson. I can look for how can I make this better instead of worse, which is what I used to do. How can I be part of the solution instead of part of the problem? As an addict, that's an incredible gift for me. It's an incredibly different way of proceeding through life. Betrayed partners, I'm, you know, the gifts of the goddess there might be, you know, yeah, trust is never going to be as unconditional as it was before, but now it's earned, and I know it's earned. And more than that, hopefully my addict has learned to become vulnerable and honest and open. A lot of times the gift in sex addiction recovery is more of a couple's gift, where couples will say, we're closer than ever because of the mess that we went through. Um, and we've grown as people, which is a good thing. So, you know, recovery and the process of healing really is a hero's journey. And I like looking at it this way. It makes me want to be a better person, basically. Um, and I love looking at the journey of recovery this way because there are stumbles and there are pitfalls and there are scary things. Life happens on life's terms, and you know, but I now know how to deal with it. I don't have to, as an addict, I don't have to run away from it. You know, anytime I had a feeling before, I got high, I got drunk, or I went chasing sex, anything to get me out of my head. And now I kind of just face the problem and deal with the problem. If I'm in a relationship, my partner and I, we can learn to fight the problem instead of fighting each other. And that's a huge, huge difference. Fighting the problem instead of fighting each other. Let's identify what the problem is and let's be on the same team. Let's work together to resolve the problem. This is part of the journey. And you know, we're gonna go through these stages. It's not gonna be smooth, it's not gonna be easy, but it's always going to be worthwhile. So I hope that is uplifting. And Tammy, will you put that link in the chat feature that you sent me earlier?
I will. Yes,
Tammy
I
sent
will
me a
gladly do.
5-minute video that looks at the characters that Joseph Campbell identifies in his story, and it's hilarious. It's like 5 minutes long. It's really
Yes.
fun. So
Yes,
watch that
I will,
after the
I
webinar.
will send that, but I'm gonna, so like when you were just talking about be part of the, you know, the problem solving, like, so, you know, Dr. Rob does a peer case consultation group weekly, and yesterday's case, like it was exactly that. They were fighting, you know, the case shared was that the couple is fighting each other, and it's all about the emotion, and they're not getting into, can we problem solve this together, you know. And even when you were talking about like that, you and I and I use the same thing. I want to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. That we have the ability to get out of ourselves and think that way is a gift of recovery, because neither of us, I know us well enough to know for sure that neither of us were thinking about how can I be part of the solution. We were just, tearing through life, so that is a gift. I pulled up, I have, I like little quotes, and as you know, and I have a one that I saved. I don't save all of them, thank goodness. But if you are stuck in a rut today, it's because you got comfortable there. And it shows a bicycle in a mucky, area. And I go, that's exactly right. It's like, even if it's not great, it's like, this is a really gross picture. But if you got comfortable in that muck, that's where you're going to stay. And it is a hero's journey, for either partner to be willing. When we do the Empowered Women's Retreat, I go, these are the women that are willing to take this, incredible step for their own healing. Even when you were talking about, that from a partner's, it isn't always the couples, because sometimes the addict is absolutely not going to show up. They're not going to do their work, but a partner still has the ability to show up for themselves, and being part of the solution for yourself, can be, I'm going to hold my internal boundaries. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do. I'm going to trust my intuition. I'm going to have my helpers and mentors. When you're talking about the hero's journey with that, like that's why we do this work in community, because, and do we outgrow, on some level, you and I have there's probably rarely something that is said at a 12-step meeting that we haven't heard. We may not have heard it in a while, and it may be a refresher, but that doesn't mean I've outgrown the 12-step. I still need that, and I still need to connect. And now I can turn around and be, a helper, to someone else. So, but that doesn't mean I still don't need helpers, because, when you're talking about life is life, and, the last 2 years, there has been a lot in my personal world, and I was like, there's been a lot of valleys, and I know for sure that that's part of life. And I know for sure I've had people to reach out to have support and to have that reframing, so that I don't, get into my own, whatever I'm scared, fear, whatever it is that, or whatever that would not be helpful, for me. Um, uh, so, when you're talking about you're called to an adventure, and I'm going like, yeah, a lot of people go, yeah, hanging up that phone, until there's, enough of a, crisis to move things around. But anyway, so great topic. I love it. I will pull that.
And while Tammy pulls that, I will simply add to this that an addict has a hero's journey, a betrayed partner has a hero's journey, and then the relationship should probably have a hero's journey as well. And that's when we see the best results. When the addict has done his or her work, when the betrayed partner has done their work, then the couple can do its work together. And that's when I mean, yes, I get an individual payoff. Yes, my partner gets an individual payoff. But the real payoff for us is the relationship. So Tammy looks like she's looking for
I
like.
just found it, but
Okay.
they have yeah. So when I pulled it up, it opened, and anyway. So there it is. I won't. Yeah. I'll turn it off. So.
Very funny video. So.
It is. Yeah. Anyway, so.
Should we jump into the Q&A and type some Q&A in? We've got a couple.
Yeah. So the first one, I feel really like I need to hear some sanity today. Holidays, elections, etc., have been triggering sometimes, and helpful coping tools can be beneficial in trying times. I have good tools and a solid program, but sometimes it's good to be reminded of healthy ways to live in recovery. Yes. Yes. Like, yeah, just like I said, the valley, I was like, okay, I am in a valley right now, and it won't always be like this. And like, just having the, this is temporary. It can feel like it's eternal, but this is temporary. And what do I need to do in the moment? Doing the next right thing. That helps me a lot too. And actually knowing what the next right thing is, not the next wrong thing. Okay, Scott, I'm an avid follower of Joseph Campbell and student of the hero's journey. Thank you for telling the story and reminding me what my heart already knows is true. I need to remind myself that the thoughts in my head are not true, and that the voice from my heart has never guided me astray. Peace, my friend. And that is, yes. So share about that.
Yeah, I mean, what jumps out, and type some questions in because that's all we've got right now. The thoughts in my head are not true. That's what jumped out at me. Um, you know, I am an anxious person. I fight my negativity bias on a daily basis. I've described it before. I walk out the house and I look up to make sure the bomb is not
Oh,
dropping today, and I'm pretty sure it is dropping until I don't see it dropping. That's kind of how I go through life. And that's in large part due to my childhood. I never knew what I was going to get, so I was always braced for the insanity. And I learned that early in life. I would take a big deep breath by the back door after school and let it out because I didn't know if it was good mom or bad mom inside. If it was good mom, great. If it was bad mom, run away. Go find something to do far away from the house. Um, so that's kind of the message that I carry with me. One of my core beliefs is people will get me if I let them. People will not meet my needs. They will use me and manipulate me. This is how I sadly walk through life. And I have all of these things going on in my head. So, somebody can, you know, look at somebody else funny. They're not even looking at me, and it throws me back into my childhood trauma. And suddenly I'm terrified and think the world is out to get me. And I used to cope with that by, hmm, let's go look at porn. Let's smoke a joint. Let's get drunk. Let's go, cruise the street and look for prostitutes for the next 12 hours. That was how I dealt with it. I distracted myself from my fear of life in general. Um, in point of fact, most of those thoughts are not true. Um, you know, I, I like most addicts, my tendency is to live in the wreckage of the past, which I can do nothing about, and which causes me to only pick at my faults or my mistakes. Or, and more often for me, I live in the potential wreckage of the future. This is the terrified part of me that always thinks everybody's whispering behind my back, that always thinks everybody hates me secretly. And in point of fact, this is not true. Um, and time has proven over and over and over and over and over again that this is not true. But I still have those thoughts. So when you say the thoughts in my head aren't true, I'm assuming and I'm just imposing myself onto you. But I mean, that's what that means to me is I have to remind myself sometimes that, what, life is not as bad as I'm making it out to be. And the trick for that, by the way, is to stay in the moment. The short version for me is where are my feet? Oh, my feet are flat on the ground. I'm doing a webinar with my friend Tami. We've got a nice crowd. We're talking about a nice topic. Life is actually okay right now. If I let myself jump out to next year or last year, it's not okay because that's how my head works. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Tami.
well, and I do, and I don't struggle in that way, in quite the same way, but I still have it. So a couple weekends ago, I was going like, oh, my abandonment wound is getting poked. So I got out my Troy Love, a workbook, and I start reading, and I'm like, oh no, it's really my rejection wound. And I was like, and I actually wrote to my friend Troy, and I said, and I was like, why do I not want to even like, I don't even want to go there with that one. I don't even want to care about all that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, this is a massive, poke, 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 poke. So I absolutely had to own it and work on it. Um, and I've been burned. I get burned by people but I long ago, like it was a pretty big hurt. And I went, I can either stop caring about people to protect myself, and then that would be a really hollow life for me because I really like people. And so I was like, you're going to get burned from time to time. You're not 100% going to get this right of like who's trustworthy, or they might have been trustworthy but then something shifted. You're not going to get it right all the time. And I will choose to have those burns, from time to time, because I want to be, connected with people in a real and meaningful way, and so there's going to be some hurts, I'm tearing up. There's going to be some hurts, but overall, what to me in life is meaningful is connection with people. And when you're talking about the hero's journey, like, when you're talking about for people he didn't know, he was willing to give up his treasure, and I'm like, yeah, like that's I want to be that person who shows up for other people even when it's inconvenient. Like, it can be an inconvenient time to take a call or whatever, but I want to be that person that's going like, yeah, here's a lifeline. If I can do this, you can too. And that's what, that's why we're here, is like, we're going like, we have been on this recovery journey. We have done enough right to stay on a recovery journey. And, so not choosing to stay stuck, like, it's a gift, but it takes that first brave step. So
By the way, Troy Love is the biggest Star Wars geek on the planet.
I know, like, when
And
you're asking, and I
I
was
don't
like,
know if
I'm
you
going to
saw
get
his
this
Halloween
wrong.
costume, but he's a Jedi.
Of course he's a Jedi. Yeah, yeah. No, like, yeah. When it gets into Lord of the Rings, I finally watched the series once. I was at the initial Star Wars, but I like, there's so many of them, and I was like, oh, I think I don't know that if I could have found the unmute. So thanks for answering for me, because I'm not 100% sure. I like Han Solo. I like Han Solo. So yeah. So anyway, but yeah, like, all of that stuff, is of interest. But yeah, no, I'm way more in the non-fantastical things, but the hero's journey, I'm all in. So watch that little video. Okay, I'm in the week of discovery for my partner about acting out, and has been longer than she believed. She is having a hard time reconciling the news, and obviously hurt, angry, and confused. I feel like this recent disclosure is my abyss, with the threshold being a year or so, but relapsing a number of times since then, and lying and hiding from it. Any thoughts on how I attend to her? Don't. You can't. Like, this is one of those where I go, you need to do the work of recovery. You will continue to hurt her. So Sex Addiction 101 with Scott started last week, Saturday. We've added several guys to that group. It's an online work group, 90 minutes per week. But you're in a cycle of active addiction. Watch, Scott did a webinar on the cycle of addiction, and her continuing to hear that is the most devastating thing. So until and unless you get a solid foundation of recovery, you can't heal her wounds. You are not trustworthy. You will continue to do this. So, and I know this sounds hard and harsh, but I'm saying this is your here's where you are. You're not in the abyss. You're being given the opportunity to, you're at the threshold. Are you willing to do the work that you need to do to get solid recovery, so that you stop that? Otherwise, you're just setting this up for, and then we'll do it again, and then we'll do it again, and then we'll do it again. I mentioned the work group. Scott does a great job. Those are not therapy or treatment. We have a residential treatment program that would be amazing and healing for both of you. We have support for partners from a pro-dependent lens, 14, 21, or 28-day length of stay. That is life-changing. You get the tools that you need. The acting out is merely, like Scott talked about earlier, I'm numbing out, I'm escaping. So stopping the problematic behavior, but addressing those underlying issues. That's what healing is about. That's how we change, and support for partners. So separately, your partner, please let her know about, we have a betrayed partner work group starting on the 12th of November. There's solid information for her, but you guys have been on this journey for a year. You guys can keep doing that, cycle of addiction, and, oh, now she's discovered, and now she's hurt. Well, and then she's waiting for the other shoe to drop. So that's a lot, and I'm sorry, but I'm telling you, there's hope. You guys don't have to stay on this, but not doing anything is like he was talking about, sitting in my little cottage, worrying about my doilies, and, all of that, not making any changes. So this is your opportunity. Jump on the hero's journey, really do the work, and we're here for you.
Yeah, actually, Tammy read this question very differently than you did. I read it as initial discovery was a year ago. Now they're doing disclosure, and I'm assuming a good CSAT is involved.
No, No, this is, I feel like this recent disclosure is my abyss. So yeah, no, this does not feel like a formal therapeutic disclosure with qualified professionals. This feels like multiple relapses throughout the year. So
Okay. Well, I'm going to
am I
answer it as if it's a
okay?
disclosure, because
Yes.
I still think that's what it is. So, you would have crossed the threshold with discovery. Usually, the supernatural aid is the initial discovery, like you're cheating on me. Here's proof. Oh crap. And then we begin our transformation. We run into challenges and temptations, and an abyss for a lot of people is formal therapeutic disclosure, because this is when a betrayed partner often finds out the whole truth instead of the 70-80% that they knew already. Um, so, sometimes they know everything already, or they've made it worse in their head than it actually was. But, usually there is new information disclosed. And the betrayed partner really struggles with that, because here we are a year in, and now I'm finding out everything. So it can be a real abyss. It's one of the reasons with full therapeutic disclosure, we highly recommend that the discloser has individual support, and the disclosee, the betrayed partner, has individual support. Often, you don't spend the next couple of days together. You can spend it with your support network, so that you can work through this abyss. And your job, assuming I'm reading this question right, if Tammy's reading the question right, she told you what you need to do. Your job, if I'm reading it right, is it's time to be transformed. You've come clean. Now stay clean. You know, no more lies, no more secrets, no more manipulation, none of that. And atone. What can I do to make things better? I'm going to this, I'm going to this, I'm going to this, I'm working on this. What else can I do to help you feel safe? Is there anything I can do to help you feel safe? And look, one of the things that happens, and I hear guys ask me about this all the time. What do I do when my wife is accusing me of something I didn't do? And I say, okay, the first thing you do is you tell the truth. But you started out by saying, I understand why you're worried about that, given my past history. I didn't do that this time, but I totally understand why you might be worried that I did. What can I do to help you feel safe? We slow it down, we acknowledge our past, and we say, I'm working on this. I didn't do it this time, but I did in the past. I understand why you're worried. And one of the things that recovering addicts have to accept is their betrayed partner is well behind them on the trust scale. I know I'm sober, but does my betrayed partner know? No. And they're not trusting me yet. Okay, that's fine. I cheated for 20 years or however long. It's going to take a while, before they start to believe that I'm really being rigorously honest. So that's kind of how I read this. If the way I read the question is that, yeah, you are at that abyss. Full therapy disclosure often is an abyss, but it's also okay. Thank you. Um, it is when we can transform and atone, and that is your job at this point, is to keep your side of the street clean. Um, Formal therapy to disclosure is when we're like, here is all of it, all of the crap. Now I am going to move forward in absolute rigorous honesty, no matter what. I'm even going to tell you the stuff that might hurt you. I'm
But
even
not
gonna,
the gory details,
not the gory
and
details, right?
not without support, by like
Right.
not vomit
Yeah.
disclosures where you're just dumping stuff
Yeah.
on without protection, and
Right.
there's no support for partners. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Usually it
Even
occurs.
if it's like the partner goes, but I want to know, like I want
Yeah.
you to know, and we're going to work with our qualified professionals so that you have support. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
I'm
um,
glad you read the question right. I'm sorry that I misunderstood the
no, that's all
question.
right.
And
I think it
yeah,
could have been read either way. So
okay.
I just wanted to make sure to cover the other
Well,
option.
and I loved what you said about slowing the things down and going like, I can understand how my past behaviors, and I've done it in the past, but only say that if you actually have done that particular behavior in the past. It
Right.
can be my behaviors in the past could lead you to think that I
Right.
did this particular action now. So we tell the truth. We don't, we don't, I've had addicts, and I'm sure you have too, Scott, that have said, well, she wanted me to own that I did this. I didn't really do that, but, I said I did just because, she wanted, and I'm
Yeah.
using he and she, but because she wanted me to own that I did that. And so it was like, I want her to, stop that. And I'm like, but now she doesn't believe
Yeah.
anything. And that's just going to keep spiraling no matter what you
Yeah.
say.
I
You're
always tell
owning things that,
guys,
yeah.
once you admit it, you can't unadmit it, even if you didn't do it. The cake is baked. You can't unbake a cake, that whole thing.
And we've
Um,
done enough stuff that we don't have
yeah,
to add on. Like, trust
yeah,
me, we don't have to add on. It's like, there's always enough stuff.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, yes, there's a hurt partner who is worried, understandably. I am sure you've had this too, where I've had, addicts say, my partner is paranoid because whatever. And I was like, it's not paranoia if it's true. You have done those things. So
yeah,
a concern about this is legitimate. It's not paranoia. Oh, you know,
yeah. When they trusted you, you were sneaking around behind them. Um, so now they don't trust you. It's not paranoia. It's well-earned mistrust. Um,
yes. And especially if there's still, slips and relapses and things like that, there's more there.
yeah.
So
One of the good ways to slow things down is to use what we call AVR: acknowledge, validate, reassure is, I think, the official terminology. Acknowledge, like, you seem to be upset about this. Am I hearing you correctly? And they say, well, I'm upset about this, but I'm also upset about this. You missed that. Oh, then basically, um, now I'm speaking from the addict perspective. Like, let's say Tammy's my betrayed partner and she's mad at me about something. I need to literally repeat it back verbatim. Acknowledge, I hear you. I absolutely hear what you're saying. You're saying this, this, and this. And did I get that right? And when Tammy finally looks at me and says, yeah, that is exactly what I said, then I need to validate, which is, you know, if I was feeling, if I, I would feel this way in your shoes. Is that how you're feeling? Or I think you're feeling this. Like, validate it. You must be feeling this, this, and this, possibly based on what happened a year and a half ago. And I can hardly blame you. We validate. We slow it down and we validate. And then the third step is and again, I don't move on to the third step until Tammy looks at me and says, yes, you understand not only what I said, but why I said it and what I'm feeling. That's the validate, why I said it and what I'm feeling. When Tammy says, yes, you got it, then I can go on to the third part, which is reassure. I always switch it to restitution, make things right. But the official term is reassure. Um, oh my God. And everybody's like, yeah, but how do I know what to do? And my answer is, if you got the first two parts right, the third part's easy. you know, if you genuinely care about somebody and you understand what they're feeling and why, it's pretty easy to make restitution. It's like, oh my God, I never meant to make you feel that way. I am so sorry. I will change this behavior. I will work on this. What else can I do? You know, tell me more. When we slow it down with a process like AVR, there's imago dialogue. There's all kinds of ways of slowing down an interaction so that we can actually hear each other. And look, I'm the addict. It's usually incumbent upon me to slow my response down, because my initial response is to get defensive. Why are you saying that? Why won't you trust me? I didn't do that. I never did that. I did this, but not, we just get defensive. We start mansplaining. It doesn't work. It does not help. If I can slow it down and say, I want to understand exactly what you said. When I finally get that in my head, then I want to understand why you said it and what you're feeling. And when I slow it down and get that in my head, the rest of it's easy. It's like, oh, well, obviously I need to do this. Um, you know, and here's the deal: 9 times out of 10, Um, if I can acknowledge what you said and acknowledge why you said it and what you're feeling, the third part is done. Because a lot of times betrayed partners just want some empathy. I just want you to know what I'm thinking and feeling. I want you to understand why I'm hurting right now. And when you love somebody, empathy is the one thing you can give that maybe nobody else can. Um, so it's a nice feeling. I mean, I know what it feels like when somebody actually hears me and listens and goes, "Oh, oh my God, so sorry, never meant to do that." That's enough for me. And then if they follow that up with behavior change, making amends is also involves the final step of making amends is I change my behavior now and in the future. Um, and, and that is really what the hero's journey is all about. I'm changing my behavior now and in the future. Transformation and atonement is, steps 8 and 9, and then 10, 11, and 12 of the 12-step model. So, Tammy, thoughts or?
Well, yeah, and like the what else can I do? And if it's, like if there's like if I went, well, Scott, look, and now I'm going to bring up the whole laundry list of things. So if with a coupleship or a relationship, you're able to we've got enough to talk about with this particular situation. So what else can I do? Ideally is in regards to this particular thing, not, and now I'm going to bring up the, 1,000 things that I want you to change, so, we often talk about what is the goal, and if the goal is to have a healthy relationship, then what do we need to do to navigate this? And it's hard when there's when there's been so much hurt and mistrust and reasons for mistrust, to start to be, it is the hero's journey to go, I'm willing to take this step forward, and try to, to meet, work towards you, rather than going like, yep, just going to sit back here and, I'm going to wait and see if you change, because if you do, then maybe, but at the end of the day, that's such a lonely place to be too.
That's the pendulum at the bottom of the cycle, swinging back and forth on the abyss. When we said fight, we learn to fight the problem and not each other. We also have to learn to fight one problem at a time.
Yes, thank you.
Let's resolve the one issue. There's one story, and if we can tell another hero's journey later on that other problem, like, it's again, a good couples counselor will always work to slow the couple down so that they can hear each other, and also work to focus the couple on one issue at a time. The laundry list can't be resolved. One item on the laundry list can be resolved.
But I bet you find also, like, if I'm aware of this is a situation, and this is an area where, this type of behavior is problematic. It may have been, it may have been taking out the trash, but I tend to say I'm going to do a task and then I don't do it. That, like, it doesn't have to just be about the trash. It can be like, oh, I'm going to have some awareness of, like, if I say I'm going to do something, I need to do it and be accountable for it. So I actually do think, just holding it to one thing. But if we're really
and the
working on
one thing
growing,
there is my failure to keep my word. I say yes, and I mean no. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And we work on that problem, and we don't get into the trash and the garbage disposal and the dishes. And we get into, when you say you're going to do it. That's the issue. So and a good.
So I'm going to ask you a question. When you're saying, and I mean no, do you mean no, or do you mean no? Seriously, like, in the moment, are you going like, yeah, I'll do that? Like,
sometimes yes, and sometimes no.
Interesting.
This is a character defect that I have, which is I'll nod my head. And sometimes, I mean, I'm going to do it, but then I don't get around to it because it seems like a pain in the ass. But other times I'll nod my head and think, I'm never doing that.
Oh, interesting.
And that's just me. And
no, I get it. That's why I was asking, because you're like, yeah, I mean, no. And I was like, I don't, like, and that isn't my personal struggle. Like integrity is majorly important to me,
Right.
and like if I was going to an appointment last Saturday and there was a closure on the highway and I knew I was going to be like 4 minutes late. So I'm texting the person, not, doing it safely. But I let the person know that I was going to be a few minutes late because of traffic. And I got there and she was like, "Oh, you're less than 5 minutes late." And I was like, "But it's important to me
Yeah.
that I am, if I say I'm going to be there on time, if I've got an appointment that I do." So mine is going to be more of the something happened, but I would want you to be aware of it. So,
Yeah.
but just difference that we all have our stuff. So,
Yeah.
all
Oh, yeah.
right. Okay, we don't have any other questions, so I
Okay.
think we'll see you next month. And because I thought it was my month, I had a couple of topics that I was, pulling together. So we'll see what I
You're
decide
prepped for next
on at the
month.
last. Yeah, I was gonna say we'll see what I decide on before then. So again, check out the one tomorrow if you can. It's a special edition. And we've got a few changes in November, including Dr. Eddie's going to be on Thursdays
Thursday.
starting this month. So watch the schedule. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being here.
Mhm.